Good evening, listener, and welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Electoral Reform Hour, on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We're delighted to have with us as we explore key aspects of our democratic process. Last week, we were honored to have Prof. Samuel Egu, the resident Electoral Commissioner of Benue State, who shared his expertise on the impact of electoral reforms on the 2023 election. Tonight, we'll discuss the electoral reform journey and progress made since 1999. Our special guest will provide insights into how Nigeria's electoral system has evolved over the years, highlighting the milestones and ongoing challenges in pursuing a more transparent and effective electoral process. Stay tuned for an engaging and informative conversation. My name is Ezenwa Wagu, your anchor. Electoral Reform Hour is a program aimed to foster inclusive dialogue among citizens from varied backgrounds concerning electoral reforms and constitutional amendment. We also seek to enhance public understanding and awareness regarding electoral reforms and possibly compile and present citizen-derived recommendations to the National Assembly and INEC for consideration. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. You don't want to miss any edition of this program. Since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, the journey of electoral reforms has been essential in strengthening the country's democratic processes. The early years saw the establishment of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, marking a step towards an independent body overseeing elections. However, these initial reforms faced significant challenges, including allegations of electoral fraud and inadequate voter representation. In the period from 2008 to 2015, substantial reforms were made to improve the electoral reform network. The 2008 Electoral Reform Committee, led by Justice Okoye, proposed extensive changes that led to the Electoral Act of 2010. This act introduced biometric voter registration and aimed to address some of the issues from previous elections. Despite these advancements, problems with logistics and electoral malpractices persisted. Recent reforms, particularly with the Electoral Act 2022, have brought transformative changes. Key innovations such as electronic transmission of results and the bimodal voter accreditation system (BVAS) have been introduced to enhance the accuracy and credibility of electoral process. The 2023 elections showcase the impact of these reforms, significantly improving public confidence and reducing irregularities. Overall, Nigeria's journey of electoral reforms reflects a gradual, meaningful evolution towards a more transparent, effective electoral system. While progress has been made, the path to a fully robust electoral process continues with ongoing efforts to address remaining challenges and strengthen democratic governance. Tonight, we're excited to welcome a very special guest who will help us understand the progress of electoral reforms. Our guest is Barrister Festus Okoye, former National Commissioner, INEC. As you know, Barrister Okoye is a well-respected human rights lawyer and activist who has played a key role in promoting civil rights and democratic governance. With his rich background in electoral reforms, he will share his views on how far we come since 1999 and the challenges we still face. You are welcome to this program, distinguished.
Thank you so much.
I think this is short profile. I think it's on record that you were also a member of that Waste Commission.
Yes, I was.
And so when people quote it and just attribute everything to Justice Okoye, I think it's spiritual embezzlement. People like you should always be, headline. Dr. Jibo, Professor Jibo was also in that commission.
Exactly.
Yeah, and many other of our own people. So we see logistics as a recurring challenge. We would like to track this from the very beginning. From your experience, from logistical improvements have been implemented since 1999 to ensure a smooth conduct of elections. And so, what gaps, what are the gaps that you think that still needs to be addressed?
Well, the conduct of election is a very complex venture. And you can see the complexity from the type of reforms that has taken place over time. Now, if you look at the electoral landscape, you will see that one, as at 1999, the country had a total registered voter population of over 57 million, with 119,973 polling units. Now, by the time we got to 2003, we had a registered voter population of over 60 million with the same number of polling units. Then we got to 2007, we had over 61 million registered voters with the same number of polling units. We got to 2011 with a total registered voter population of over 73 million with the same number of polling units. Then in 2015, we had a total registered voter population of around 67 million with the same number of polling units. In 2019, during the 2019 general election, we had a total registered voter population of over 84 million with the same number of polling units, that is 119,973. Now, managing this surge in terms of registered voters created a problem because you had 119,973 polling units when you had a total registered voter population of 57 million.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, you had a total registered voter population of 84 million with the same number of polling units. What that means is that all the polling units are congested, all will be congested, and that created a logistical challenge. That is one. The second issue is that we have 8,809 registration areas or wards. All these registration areas have to be serviced. We have 774 local government areas. All these local government areas have to be serviced. So the first logistic challenge was how to move materials and personnel, one, from the national headquarters to the states, from the states to the local governments, from the local governments to the 8,809 registration areas, and from the 8,809 registration areas to the 176,846 polling units we had in 2023. But as I pointed out, between 1999 and 2019, we had 119,000.
As a measure to address that challenge, there was a point in which we had voting points.
Yes, yeah. The commission created 57,023 voting points in order to ameliorate some of this challenge. Now, those voting points were still attached to the main polling unit. What that means is that on election day, you appoint an assistant, a presiding officer for the voting points. Thereafter, after elections, the assistant presiding officers report back to the presiding officer of the mother polling unit from where they were derived. So it also created its own challenge. Now, the main challenge was how to move materials and personnel from one point to the other. The commission had to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the National Union of Road Transport Workers Union, transport workers, and also with the marine workers. But that did not solve some of the problems. On election day, sometimes some of these transporters just disappear. And because they disappear, you have to make alternative arrangements. Sometimes we hire boats. On election day, the personnel and the materials will arrive at the takeoff point. The boats will not be there, despite the fact that the commission had already paid for the boats. And then The demography of this country also did not help matters. There are so many registration areas and polling units where you cannot access by road. What that means is that the commission has to hire motorbikes. There are also places where motorbikes cannot access. What that means is that the commission has to also hire human carriers to take people up the hills and bring them down. So the demography of this country also created its own challenges. Its own challenges. But over the years, the commission has tried to overcome some of these challenges through targeted measures aimed at a more professional movement of materials and personnel.
We're going to get to that.
Yes.
We're going to get to that. You know, this thing about the ballot box gets to everywhere.
Yes.
But development does not. But people don't realize that humans take those ballot boxes to those places.
Exactly.
There is no time you go for election and you see back as the ballot box.
Right.
You will see INEC. At some point, you used to chair the civil society situation room.
Yes.
And part of the lingo, especially from you, was that the weakest link was the collation.
Yes.
The weakest link was collation. And so transparency elections is crucial. Can you highlight some of the steps that are taken to enhance transparency in voting and results collation process over the past 2 decades, if you can?
I think a lot has been achieved. A lot, and I repeat, a lot has been achieved. One of the measures that has been taken to achieve some level of transparency in the electoral process relates to the issue of voter registration. The voter registration issue is very key, is very crucial, is very important, and is also at the heart of the electoral process. The moment the commission changed the dynamics of voter registration, things began to change. And that dynamics was to have an electronic voters register that will stand the test of time. That is one. Secondly, the moment the commission started using the INEC voter enrollment device for purposes of voter registration, which emphasized both the fingerprint registration and also the facial aspect of registration, things began to change. So that's one of the key things that the commission introduced to guarantee transparency. The second one relates to the issue of the biometric voter accreditation system, which changed the landscape, changed the dynamics of voting in this country. Prior to the introduction of the beavers, some people can just go to the polling unit, claim that their names were formerly in the voters register, that is no longer in the voters register, and then they make trouble and they vote. Prior to the introduction of the beavers, some people can go to the polling unit and also vote even without being accredited. But with the introduction of the beavers, the data of every registered voter was embedded in the beavers itself. So you cannot move from one polling unit to the other in order for you to go and cast your vote. So the beavers domiciled each voter to a particular polling unit. And for you to vote, the beavers must be in a position to read either your fingerprints or read their facials. So if it's unable to read their fingerprints or read their facials, what that means is that you are not a registered voter in that particular polling unit and you are just trying to impersonate. So I think that is also a crucial element in trying to guarantee some level of transparency in the electoral process. There's also the issue of having a customized ballot papers. And sometimes, as you know, the ballot papers are not even imprinted in this country. So the commission keeps on hiding from one security printer to the other in order to preserve the sanctity of the ballot. And then when these ballots arrive, they go straight to the central bank. And before they are moved out of the central bank, all the registered political parties fielding candidates in the election go to inspect some of these ballot papers before they are moved. So I think that over the years, the commission has introduced some level of transparency in this whole process. And the political parties also have been playing a key role. If you look at the Electoral Act says every registered political party has the right to appoint polling agents, and the commission accredits these polling agents, and they can follow the process from the beginning to the end. And the political parties have been doing that. So I think that the commission has more or less democratized the electoral process to the extent that every Nigerian has an opportunity of following how the process goes. But there are very serious challenges still existing.
I wish that the political parties actually provide party agents the way you are talking, you're putting it now, in terms of percentage. Oftentimes for the presidential, they hardly cover the field. Many of them hardly cover the field, except for the dominant political parties.
The truth of the matter is that for the 2023 general election, none of the political parties cover the field. Even those who covered the field, even those who provided data and had accreditation tags issued, some of them didn't even pick up the accreditation tags. So what that means is that on election day, so many of the political parties did not even have polling agents in any of the polling units. So the bottom line is that if you want to be a political party, if you want to remain relevant, if you want to observe the process, if you want to monitor the process, you must be on ground, and you must have base in every registration area. That is the only way you can harvest polling agents.
Many people don't know you come to this thing with over 30 years experience as a lawyer, first and foremost.
Yes.
There are many people who just hear Festus Okoye. They think he just imagined INEC. But you took voter education a notch higher, while you were there. But there are still gaps.
Yes.
What are those gaps? What do you think can strengthen voter education, especially working together with civil society organizations and even the National Orientation Agency?
Well, I think that one, the traditional method of voter and civic education does not go far anymore. And when I'm talking of the traditional methods of civic and voter education, I'm talking about jingles on television and on radio, market outreach, stakeholder engagements, and so on and so forth. The truth of the matter is that a majority of the voting population now are in the social media. And it is very, very difficult to compete in the social media. The commission tried to engage the social media through the creation of INEC Citizens Contact Center. He also created what he calls INEC Radio and so on to engage in the social media. But it's not enough. So I think that one of the things that the commission needs to do is to send the bulk of its personnel in the Department of Voter Education and Publicity for further training on how to engage the social media. The commission cannot compete on equal par with everybody, but at least it can.
But at some point, there was the INEC ambassadors, where influencers, people in the arts, the Nollywood, and all of that became INEC ambassadors. How far did that go?
Well, it worked, and it still works. But the truth of the matter is that there is a limit to what the INEC youth ambassadors can do. We also engaged the National Youth Service Corps members, and they went to the markets, they went to the streets, they had jingles, they had road shows, and so on and so forth. But the social media has taken the thing a notch higher. So the battle is in the social media, and how to engage the social media is now the big challenge and the new challenge which the commission has to face. I agree that there are still so many of our people who believe and get their information from the traditional media, from the radio, from the televisions, through jingles, through newspaper adverts, and so on and so forth, and also through market outreach and through the traditional rulers and so on. But there's a huge gap in terms of social media engagement, and I think that is the gap that the commission should try and plug.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be doing a double barrel now, and double barrel, putting side by side the decline in turnout for elections. In 2023, I think we did as low as 27%.
Yes.
And there are people at the National Assembly, there are conversations about organizing election in one day. All elections in one day. Because you've been in the saddle, and not just been in the saddle, you've led NBA observer mission, you've been in situation room, you are in INEC, you've seen election in all its glory, if you want to use that word. What do you think can be done to address decline on one side? Do you share also this thing about organizing elections in one day, about getting registration for 10 years, or voter register, 10 years voter registration, and all the other reform issues that have come to the table? We are running through a break period, but you can take that for another 3-4 minutes and see what we can do with that.
Well, for me, it is dangerous to schedule all elections in this country in one day. If you schedule all elections in one day, and there's a major turmoil, there's a major collapse, there will be a constitutional crisis. And that constitutional crisis, the country may not be in a position to get out of it. So I think that it is dangerous to organize all the elections in one day. It is better, rational, and more prudent to have 2 or 3 strands of elections, so that at each point in time, there is a government in place. If something happens at the level of the National Assembly and at the level of the presidency, there will be governors and members of the State Assembly in place who can put heads together and get something done. If you get the presidential election in place and National Assembly in place, and something happens to the governorship and the State Assembly, there will be a president in place, there will be National Assembly in place. They can play a key role in making sure that the gap does not affect our constitutional stability. But if you organize all elections in one day and there's a collapse and the electoral management body is unable to organize the election, and the constitution says all elections must be organized within a certain period, if not, there will be a fluctuation of time. What are you going to do about it? So I think that the way we are going is much, much better, and we should stick to it. It has worked for us, and it's working for us, and there's no need to change what is working as of today. Secondly, you talked about the decline in voter turnout. One of the reasons for the decline in voter turnout is improvements in the use of technology in the conduct of elections. That's one of the reasons for the decline. Those who had double registration are unable to use their second voter's card, their third voter's card, and their fourth voter's card to go and vote. So if you registered 4 times and the BVAS does not allow you to vote 4 times, what that means is that you are voting 1/4.
So what do we do with the cleaning of the voter register that we keep hearing about?
Exactly. The commission keeps on cleaning the voters register. But this a challenge has existed for a long period of time. So you have two approaches to this whole thing. Either you do a gradual and graduated approach to cleaning the voters register, or you jettison the voters register and start afresh. But I think that we have a very robust voters register. It is not perfect. So the cleaning of the voters register should continue. But we must also get the political elite to imbibe the tenets of democracy, to believe and agree on this country. If you believe in this country, you believe in democracy, you believe in the electoral process, you will not get underage children to go and register to vote. If you believe in this system, you will not go and get almanacs and try to manipulate pictures in order to have a registration of people who are not human beings. So these are some of the challenges that has impacted on the issue of voter turnout. And violence in election. Nobody wants to go and vote and die. Violence in election is one of the key issues that drives people away from the polling units. And then there are also some people who more or less have disengaged from the political process on grounds that the votes do not count. But I think that some of the measures that have been introduced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, and also some of the work that has been done by civil society groups and organizations, has given some people confidence that their votes can count. And democracy is not a finished product. We must keep on working on it and keep on improving in order for us to stabilize our democracy and our electoral process.
So you talked about technology, violence, and voters who have disengaged,
yes,
from the process, because so that also brings us back to the voter education thing.
Yes.
How much are we engaging? Because these improvements, we've witnessed improvements. Like I said, you cover the field in terms of the election firmament,
yes,
observer, administrator, and more importantly, lawyer. so yes, from every side you look at election, you what can we do to reignite citizen interest, especially those who are saying this process it doesn't count, their votes didn't count, 2023, blah blah, IREV. What do you think can happen?
For me, the first thing we need to do is to put the issues as they are before the Nigerian people. One, Nigerians must understand the constitutional and legal instruments guiding the elections and how this process works. Because there are so many people who do not understand how the process works and only imagine how the process works or conjure how the process works. So the first thing we need to do is to get people to know how the process works. The process of accreditation. During the continuous voters registration exercise, and I really want to emphasize this. We told people, if you have ever registered in Nigeria, you don't need to register again. But because in some places they locked up the markets and say, oh, before you can be allowed back into the market, you must show your voters registration. And then some people who left their voters cards in the village say, rather than me traveling to the village, let me go and register again. So they come to the registration centers. You ask them, have you ever registered? They said, no, over my dead body, I have never registered. And they register again, which makes their registration double registration. So during the cleanup, their new registration is removed. And then on election day, they arrive and then they are making trouble that they have been disenfranchised. So one of the things we need to do is to get people to know that if you have ever registered, you don't need to register again. If you have lost your voter's card, what you need to do is to apply for a new one. If you have moved from one place to the other, you apply for transfer. So for me, that created a lot of challenges and a lot of problems. And people felt that they were disenfranchised because their double registrations were removed. So this also involves voter education. Secondly, people must understand what we mean by result management. When I was observing elections, when I was in Kaduna, I observed an election in one polling unit. The moment a particular political party won in that particular polling unit, people marched out to the streets and started celebrating that their candidate has won. But it's only one polling unit. So we must get people to understand how election works, and the fact that your candidate has won in one polling unit or in one registration area does not automatically mean that your candidate has won. So these are some of the issues we need to put before Nigerians for them to understand how this process works and for us to ignite their interest. But having said that, talking does not solve the problem. I think that what will engender confidence in the Nigerian people is for them to see with their eyes visible improvement, with their eyes that the demography of the National Assembly has changed. For instance, that almost every political party is represented, or at least over 6 political parties are represented in the National Assembly. What that means is that for you to contest election, for you to win, for you to be declared, for you to be returned, you have to work hard at the election. By so doing, Nigerians will see that it is not business as usual, and that if you work hard as a political party, you can win.
Thank you very much. My take always is that election is a competitive enterprise, and that those who compete in it will notice whatever improvements there are. We'll take a short break. When we return, Electoral Reform Hour on Radio Nigeria continues.
Radio Nigeria, uplifting the people and uniting the nation.
Are you ready for change? Join the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, for the Electoral Reform Hour. This program amplifies electoral reform campaigns and provides citizens with opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will strengthen our electoral process.
I think what we should do and what we've been advocating for is to find a way to harmonize all the biometrics we have been doing in the country so that we have one. If you have your NIMSI card, for instance, you should be able to carry all the data, social security, like it's done everywhere. So when you vote, everything about it is there.
My position is that the result, substantive, the election ends at the polling unit. Once the presiding officer, in the presence of polling agents, in the presence of security men, in the presence of all other stakeholders, including some of the people that voted, counted the scores of candidates and parties openly, entered the results into Form EC8A and snapped it, that is the real result. And it is that goes into IREF.
Let's embark on the path to significant transformation and well-informed decision-making together. As the National Assembly, INEC and other stakeholders work towards improving our electoral process, you too can be part of the decision-making process by participating in the radio program.
You are on to Comrade Abdullah Mohammed. I'm calling for Bida Local Government Area Council of Niger State. I'm advocating to federal government or the member constituted to look into this electoral reform. That why should a member be in the house to speak the truth? At the end of the day, what we continue receiving or hearing is to suspend that member and to tell him to join any political party of his choice. Who then are we expecting to come and tell us the truth?
This is Brian Orator from Latte ID State. My idea is that INEC should stand firmly as an independent body. Secondly, the local government election should be conducted from the INEC, not from the national level.
Remember, democracy is for the people. Together, we can make a difference. Let your voice be heard in the Electoral Reform Hour, where every opinion matters. PACA, making democracy work for the people.
Radio Nigeria, uplifting the people and uniting the nation.
Yes, it's still the Electoral Reform Hour, and you can be part of this live program by sharing your comments via the social media platform on X at paaca.ng, by sharing your comments via the social media platform on X at paaca.ng with the hashtag Electoral Reform Hour. And you can leave your questions and comments for us on Facebook via at paaca capital letters, and our WhatsApp number 0816-8083-424. The phone lines will be open soon. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You are listening to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. With us in the studio is Barrister Festus Okoye. It's 1 year that you know your tenure in INEC you completed your tenure in INEC, and we are fortunate to be the first people that you're talking to after that 1 year break. So welcome back.
Thank you.
So the Waste Commission that you were a member, there is a widespread discussion about adopting the recommendations from the Waste Committee report. From your experience, what aspects of this report do you think will most improve our election process? And I tell people that a lot of it has been implemented.
Yes.
So, but you still hear, I saw some banners, people talking about electoral reform. You know, what are those, what, you were there, you cooked that meal that every other person has been trying to take a slice of. What part of that recommendation do you think still needs to be worked on?
Well, there were different aspects of the recommendations. There were some recommendations that were administrative in nature, and some of these recommendations were made to the Electoral Management Body. And there were 10 of them, 10 recommendations, 10 key recommendations. The first recommendation relates to the issue of voter registration. We recommended that we must have continuous voters registration in the country. INEC has implemented a substantial portion of this. We also recommended a redesign of the ballot papers and ballot paper handling. INEC has customized the issue of ballot papers and so on and so forth, and provided security features in our ballot papers. We also talked about polling units and polling stations, and we recommended that no polling unit should have more than 500 registered voters. With the reforms that have been introduced in terms of the creation of additional polling units, that has been done. We also talked about distribution of election materials, which is a sore point, and we recommended that we should have timely distribution of election materials using the Nigerian Air Force, using the National Union of Road Transport Workers, and so on. So many aspects of this has been implemented. We also talked about the collation and declaration of results. We talked about stakeholder engagements and meetings. We talked about the recruitment of electoral officers, the recruitment of ad hoc staff, and party agents. So most of these have been implemented administratively. There are some recommendations that are still hanging, that have not been implemented. The first relates to the issue of the mode of appointing the chairman of the Electoral Management Body and national commissioners. The second relates to the issue of introduction of electronic voting machines in our electoral process. The third relates to the issue of the bill on political parties registration and the Electoral Offences Commission.
When these recommendations were made, you were
Yes.
not in INEC.
Yes.
You were a member of the committee.
Exactly.
You were also in the 2014
National
Conference.
Yes.
With the benefit of practical experience
Yes.
and force of personal example.
Yes.
Where do you think the shoe pinches right now?
In terms of what?
In terms of election management, vis-a-vis the recommendations that the ones that are not administrative.
For me, I think that the ball is with the political parties and the political elite. We have had robust electoral reforms. There has been constitutional alterations impacting on elections. We have a brand new Electoral Act 2022. If you put all these things together, we can have a good election. But you cannot have a good election until the political elite agree that Nigeria should have a good election. It's so many people disengage from the electoral process because of issue of violence. It is the political elite that recruit political talks to go and snatch ballot papers and smash ballot boxes on election day. The issue of even organization of party primaries. Sometimes most of the challenges that the commission has relates to the management of political party primaries, because that's where the problem starts. The third relates to securing the atmosphere, securing the environment for elections. On election day, sometimes the commission recruits over 1,500, over 1.5 million ad hoc staff. You have 176,846 polling units, and you have a presiding officer and assistant presiding officer 1, 2, and 3. That gives you over 700,000. Then you have 8,809 registration areas. You have to have collation officers there. Then down the line, you also have a collation at the state assembly level, federal constituency level, senatorial level, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, you find out that you have to deploy over 1.5 million ad hoc staff on election day. Sometimes the commission will get into this contractual arrangement with drivers.
Yeah.
Some of the political elite will go and corrupt the drivers, and they will simply walk away. On election day, the commission will be struggling in order to fill that particular gap. Sometimes the commission will train ad hoc staff and deploy them. sometimes some people will go and switch some of these ad hoc staff. So these are some of the challenges that have been created. So for me, the remaining aspects of the Electoral Reform Committee work that has not been implemented are not fundamental to having a good electoral process. They are good, but they are not fundamental. There are some countries, even advanced countries, that still use the paper ballot, who have the capacity to use the electronic voting machines, but they don't trust a technology to an extent that they will trust it with their future. So I think that if the political elite imbibe the spirit of democracy, imbibe the spirit of the electoral process, agree that this country must remain a democracy, we can have a good election even without implementing the remaining aspects of the Electoral Reform Committee work.
This program is for you, the listener, and the phone lines will be opened shortly. You can reach us on 09154091048 09150910483. It's your time to call. You can engage Barrister Festus, former National Commissioner, Independent National Electoral Commission, a human rights lawyer, a member of the Justice Ways Commission. Like I said, nobody knows it better than him at this point. You can also leave your questions and comments for us on WhatsApp at 0816-8083-424 and on X at paaca.ng and Facebook at paaca tab. And then, like I said,
hello, sir.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. This is Electoral Reform Hour on Radio.
Thank you very much. My name is Adam West from Silesia.
Thank you, Adam West. Thank you for.
Thank you very much.
Always.
Good evening, my barrister there.
Thank you.
Good evening.
See, my question goes this way. All along, we've been having controversy over electoral complaints before swearing in. I hope that one is going to be taken care of this time around, because by the time they finish election, they've not there's complaints here and there, and they rush to swear in whether the chairman or the senator or the president. I don't know what I mean. That aspect sometimes is very. It's suspicious that the INEC is, I don't know, it's so skeptical that sometimes the INEC could be taking some kind of side on the area of electorates. So, but if the government can, they can make it sincere, more sincere for courts to make sure to treat all cases of argument before swearing in anybody into the office. Even if it will cause them suspending the person or even cancelling the election outrightly, that is better. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam West. Thank you for calling in.
I understand your sentiments. I understand the issues you have raised. You see, but if you look at Section 285 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 285 has tried to take care of some of these challenges. That is why, if you look at Section 285, it has separated what we call pre-election litigation from election-related litigation and provided timelines for all of them. And if you look at it very carefully, it says that for instance, every election petition shall be determined within a period of 180 days by the court of first instance, and that if it goes on appeal, it must be determined by the Court of Appeal within a period of 60 days, and if it goes to the Supreme Court must also determine it within a period of 60 days. For presidential election petition, the Court of Appeal serves as the court of first instance, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. The same thing applies to pre-election matters where the National Assembly and the law has made the Federal High Court as the exclusive court that has jurisdiction over pre-election matters. But if you recall, before the amendment of the Constitution, some election petitions last for over 4 years. In fact, some people even complete their tenure and the petitions relating to the election will still be in court. So I think that we have made a tremendous progress in this particular area. The Independent National Electoral Commission does not have lawmaking powers. Yes, it has power to make regulations and guidelines, but in terms of amending the Constitution, in terms of amending the Electoral Act, it is the National Assembly that has the power to amend the Electoral Act. So if the National Assembly so wishes, and if the citizens also wish, they can approach the National Assembly and find ways and means of moving.
Hello.
Hello, good evening. Can we meet you? This is electoral hour on Electoral Reform Hour on Radio Nigeria. Yeah.
This is Abubakar Musa calling from Bida, Niger State.
Abubakar.
Thank you so much, Barrister Festus Okoye. As far as Barrister is concerned, it's household name, because during the election you will hear him up and on trying to clarify issues. He talked about the issue of the nature of our democratic society. I believe as far as democratic society, our Nigerian democratic structure is concerned, INEC supposed to have understand it deeply, that there is no need for reoccurrence issues that we're having during elections. I hope INEC will dedicate their effort to undertake a SWOT analysis so that we can have election devoid of giving excuses off and on. Not quite long, some national electoral commissioners were appointed, and a past member of INEC, a past chairman of INEC, criticized the process that most of them appointed were partisan. What is the commission doing to ensure that politicians are not appointed as national electoral commissioners? Because election in Nigeria used to be open, compromised by politicians because of do or die affairs. Thank you very much.
So it will be good for you to listen so that he can respond to you. Thank you very much.
I think Abubakar Musa's question is a genuine one. Unfortunately, the Electoral Management Body or the Independent National Electoral Commission has no hand in the appointment of either the chairman or national commissioners or resident electoral commissioners. If you look at section 153 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it establishes INEC as one of the federal executive bodies. And then section 154 of the same constitution gives the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria the exclusive right to appoint national commissioners and resident electoral commissioners, and then 156 has also listed the qualification of these people. And then it gives the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria the power to screen and clear the appointees. So it is the prerogative of the president to make such an appointment, and those who are in the commission already do not have the right or the virus to question who has been appointed. So it is your representatives in the National Assembly that you ought to approach anytime a nomination goes to them, because they can reject such a nomination on the basis of the fact that the person is partisan or has some issues.
So in truth, the president nominates.
The president nominates.
He does not appoint.
The president nominates, and the National Assembly. Yes,
because this is we continue to mix this up, yes. And that's why. Hello.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the Electoral Reform Hour on Radio Nigeria. Hello.
Hello, sir.
I said this is the Electoral Reform Hour on Radio Nigeria.
Yes, you are on to comment live.
Comrade Abdullah Isule.
The issue of electoral reform, advocating that it should be stipulated in the Constitution that senator or reps that is being elected and sworn in should not only be sitting in a big country, it should be coming back to the Barr constituency and be liaising. At least there be a town meeting. But for them to stay in Abuja for
it will be very difficult for them to even come to their constituency. And they are the allocation of the amount of money to senators and US for them to come back to the constituency and be beautiful and not from them. And they are so much.
Thank you very much, Abdullahi. I think your point is made. He wants his senators to be coming back home.
I think the point is that he needs to understand that the remit of the senators and members of the House of Reps is not only representation. They also have the remit of lawmaking. So they have to be in Abuja to make laws, but they also have to visit the constituency in order to meet with their constituents.
See, let's run this. What do you consider the most impactful electoral reform, that's been done since 1999? I keep saying that it's the most amended piece of legislation, the Electoral Act. But in your view, and because of where you sit in all of this, what do you think is the most important electoral reform issue that has been done? And what overall improvements has it done on the electoral process?
For me, there are 5 of them. But the one that is outstanding is the alteration to Section 285 of the Constitution. The one that provides timeline for the filing, hearing, and disposal of pre- and post-election litigation. Section 285 clearly defined what we mean by pre-election matters. Before, the issue of what a pre-election matter involves has created a lot of confusion, created a lot of problem. But Section 285 of the Constitution has clarified that and has also provided timelines for the disposal, for the filing, hearing, and disposal of all pre-election matters. So for me, that stands for me as number 1. The number 2 is also the amendment that the National Assembly made to Section 81 of the Constitution, dealing with the financial independence of the Commission in terms of deriving its funds from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation. The third one, for me, is giving exclusive jurisdiction to the Federal High Court in terms of hearing of pre-election matters. There was a period in the Commission where political party primaries was conducted in one state. Litigation arising from in Anambra State, litigation arising from political party primaries that was conducted in Anambra State. One was filed in Ibadan, one was filed in Imo, one was filed in Niger. In fact, all the geopolitical zones had a matter relating to pre-election matter that was
originated from
Anambra State. So I think that removing the hearing of pre-election matters from the state high court to the federal high court was also key. The fourth one relates to the issue of Section 54, which recognized the fact that people who are virtually impaired or incapacitated have a right in the electoral process by making it mandatory or asking INEC to provide braille ballots and other assistive
materials
for people who have.
We are coasting home. Yes. We wish we had 2 hours for this program. Looking ahead to 2027, yes. What are those key priorities you would wish for INEC? In fact, sometimes I have problem when we narrow this to INEC. Stakeholders in the electoral. What are those priority issues that you envision for a future Nigeria electoral system?
I think that there must be a collective resolve by all Nigerians, one, to advance democracy and advance our electoral process. You can
also share your final thoughts on that.
Yes, that is one. Secondly, I think that the time has come for the National Assembly to pass the Electoral Offences Commission and Tribunal Bill. Let us have a dedicated a commission that can track electoral offences, prosecute electoral offenders, set up mobile courts on election day in order to deal with acts of impunity on election day. The third issue is that I think that the commission must, early enough, resolve the challenge of the National Union of Road Transport Workers in terms of movement of
transport vendors, because there is the maritime guys too.
Yes, the maritime guys and so on. It must resolve this matter once and for all, because the gaps you notice on election day, the anxiety you notice on election day relates to sometimes the disappointment that the commission faces from the breach of contractual relationship by some of
transport vendors,
these vendors. And I also think that the issue of cleaning up of the voters register should be made a priority by the electoral management body, and also maybe the introduction of electronic voting machines and voting by persons in diaspora. So these are some of the issues that the commission should take on board.
They don't come better than Barrister Festus Okoye, former National Commissioner INEC. To our dear listener, thank you for joining us on this edition of the Electoral Reform Hour, brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. After this program, if you have any questions, you can reach us via our WhatsApp, text on our WhatsApp 0816-8083-424. We especially appreciate the contributions of our funders, MacArthur Foundation. We apologize for questions we could not take today, but the conversation continues next week, same time, same station. Our engineers, for today's program, the engineer on duty is Adeyemi Solomon and Christy Ankeli. The ICT personnel are Mohammed Sani. My studio manager has been Finehas Udoeyo, and producer is Ondo Hemba Ohin, and supervisor is Husseina Akila, MNI. The facilitating crew has been Grace Abu and Jeremiah Nkume. See you same time, same station. God bless you.